All right, Chris, I think we are live.
Outstanding.
Okay, welcome back, everyone, to Alliance Aces. I'm Chip Rodgers, VP of Marketing and Alliances with WorkSpan, and I'm really excited, thrilled today to be joined by Chris Weber. Chris Weber is a senior analyst at IDC, covering all things about alliances and partnerships. And Chris, welcome.
Thank you very much, Chip, for the invitation. Happy to be here.
Yeah, good. Where are you? So I'm in San Francisco Bay area. Where you're in the Boston area?
I'm in the Boston area. We're actually seeing bright, sunny skies, no clouds, and starting to see the beginning of spring. So I'm very energetic about it.
Yeah, that's great. Good. Well, Chris, we've been collaborating on a number of things over the last year or so, and I just love talking to you because you always have really interesting, insightful things to say about the whole alliance market, and companies working together. And you're always talking to your customers who are alliance professionals. And maybe we could start with Chris. You could maybe just talk a little bit about what you and your team are up to at IDC these days.
Sure. So we are facing, the ongoing changing market as much as anyone, because this world is being forced by the necessity to re-examine itself. And that also is impacting alliances and ecosystems, because the old traditional way of looking at business, or the old models, just don't fit anymore. Mm-hmm. And as many of the viewers easily recognize, just the simple thing of starting on job titles. What we used to do in our roles have changed significantly over the last few years. The roles of the companies that we represent have increased and changed. So an ISV is no longer considering themselves to be an ISV, or I'm a GSI, or whatever the old naming conventions are, because roles are being forced to change for several reasons, not only just due to business economics, but because customer demands. So we're taking a look at those, and some probably key points and business points that I'm seeing, and others within IDC is first and most of all, the necessity for what I call a customer first approach. Getting back to the basics. What does our customers want? That should cascade back to what alliances and ecosystems we're forming, how we create our business requirements and satisfy those. And that's something that sometimes we forgot. We were just always trying to enter new markets or get there faster than someone else. And the customers started to realize perhaps the quality or the value that was being associated with what was being presented was not always equaling the hype or, the discussion. So that concept of value and trust really becomes a cornerstone. I can't forget about it, but quality, just like, in the real estate business, location. The importance of multidimensional partnerships. It used to be even I can do it alone. Maybe I have to do it with someone else, but really that criticalness now that even a two-sided relationship may not be satisfactory to answer all customer demands. So now the complexity of relationships are exploding, and how I have to manage that. That's driving new skill sets within alliances and ecosystem groups. Mm-hmm. It's looking at, if I'm dealing with all of these organizations, I have to bring something back. So we're starting to see the emergence of now not only the mega cloud platforms, but I'm calling it the mega alliance platforms. Who can aggregate these in a really cost-effective, neutral way of bringing the right selections depending on the customer needs from maybe a larger ecosystem down to a smaller customer-centric one.
Mm-hmm.
And with that comes monetization and modeling. It's great to talk about this stuff, but when the rubber hits the road, what are the cost benefits? How do I justify this not only for the one-to-one relationship, but to my management? How can I say that this relationship is driving the company to move forward and achieve its goals? And at one time, we just looked at one-dimensional KPI metrics, but also the need to align back to the corporate strategic goals, because I can be making $1 million, let's say, with 80% margin, and the world would seem great. But if it's not moving my company forward to its corporate goals, that money is not going to be utilized or be realized in the best opportunity. So we're getting back to more basics, refocusing on, what's going to drive and help my company in the long term. So as others, who are listening to this recognize, I earn my seat at the table, so to speak, with the other individuals and my counterparts who are also trying to help achieve those corporate goals.
Yeah. Gosh, that was a lot, but but I love how you start with customer first. I think that's in the sort of the changing market dynamics. I think that's we're certainly seeing that a lot with our customers, that it's the competitive pressure that is really creating this dynamic of, gosh, I need to go pull on some new capability, and I'm not going to go hire a bunch of people, and so the best way to do it is to partner, but I don't have a relationship, or we need to go into a new sort of product area and put something together that we can bring to market together. That seems to be something that which I think is the point that you're making, this sort of multi-dimensional partnering.
Right. And the environment's going to change. So one model doesn't fit all. And, that means we're going to have to, under that quality umbrella that I probably spoke to nauseam about, becomes even more important, because then I have to say, what are the right partners in order for me to achieve this? And it may not be just one partner, one relationship. I have to see how, and, if we go to baseball terms, having a utility player, because I may need those partners in different roles at different times. And I'm not going to have a wide portfolio. I might be able to reduce that and go with the partners who have the same sort of culture, the same sort of view, the same sort of objectives. And having that match translates into the way I'm perceived by the end clients and the people that are going to, be purchasing my offerings.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I think it's. You also mentioned that, which I think you're alluding to here, is this idea of, of course, creating value, between the partners, but then the trusted relationships and building trust, because I think to your point, when you're partnering, you're also sort of adopting or participating in that partner's. You're each participating in each other's brand value, right? So it needs to be additive, for both partners, right?
Exactly. And give you a little analogy of that. Let's say you just drive your car on a normal streets under normal conditions. Your brakes are going to be important, right? So you need someone who is going to install your brakes and do a proper job. That's a level of trust. Imagine then you go on a trip, let's say to the Rockies, and you're coming down, 10,000 feet with windy roads at a high speed, probably different changing road conditions. that trust takes on a whole other
definitely
level.
like good breaks.
So when you have to trust, under this environment, think of the customers in that way, that now they're relying on a lot more cloud solutions. Mm-hmm. They don't have control over the infrastructure and can't always have that expertise available to make sure it's up and running. So any outage costs them significant amount of money. Any outage creates a negative effect or probably could impact their stock. So these, as we change the way we conduct our business, especially in the OT and IT environment, a lot more is at risk because the rules have changed and the way we, execute our business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of complexity to partnering. Out yesterday, I was talking with Aslam Jamal, who's with ForgeRock in the security space, and they're walking a tightrope, right, between having things locked down enough that you protect things, but then not so much that you can't do your work, right? And you bring partners into that equation, then that you have to really make sure that balancing act is aligned, not just with your company and your customers, but also with the partners that you're bringing a joint solution to market with.
Right, very much so.
Yeah. So Chris, what first of all, I'll mention it. You haven't mentioned it, but you have just a few really amazing things that you do in your research. I think one is that you have a regular newsletter that you put out, I think quarterly or maybe more often, on what's happening in alliances. You also have the council meetings that are just really, really great. I think twice a year, with really good content, and it's a pretty intimate group of people, 50 or 60, 70 people, maybe something like that, and but just always really good sessions and good networking. Tell me a little bit about what's on the horizon for the next session that you have coming up.
Sure. So for the councils, we do hold it semi-annual. And as you mentioned, we're looking for individuals who are senior level, who participate, who are trying to resolve common problems and issues. So people are more willing to share and hope that they're learning both from successes as well as what challenges they're facing, because sometimes you learn more from those issues than you do from always the wonderful success that everybody's always having and enjoying. The council takes on a unique perspective because the participants who are normal IDC subscribers or who are invited actually get to help determine what the topics are going to be. So it's not just an IDC perspective, it's actually listening to them and prioritizing what's going to happen. So at this session that's coming up on June 4th in San Mateo, we're actually taking a look at some pretty strong topics. One we always seem to go back to is metrics and value and justifications.
Yep.
But other areas is, how is our organization reporting structure impacting our success? Does it really matter who we report to and how we're aligned? And have we seen other models or other reporting structures be beneficial in the past? What is a new toolkit that's necessary? Because most of us who had these roles in, alliances and ecosystem roles or channel are using tools that were developed a long time ago, not for the same purpose as you carefully know and have been able to niche out a unique offering. What are the other tools that have to go and support that role? So how do they plan? How do they integrate? How do they collaborate? All those sorts of things we'll be taking a look at. Looking at, again, what are models for continued success, et cetera. So we'll hold that session in San Mateo on June 4th. And it's usually a long day for me, but a very beneficial day because I learn as much as others. But I always say it's a collaborative. I just really host, and the fellow participants really are the major engagers. But it's also my way of having some reciprocity that I'm giving back to individuals so they can voice. And that goes in line with, as you mentioned, my newsletter, which I do produce on a quarterly basis. And that way I can help out my readers, my followers, et cetera, with not having to hunt for all this information that's coming up. Mm-hmm. So I typically have several pages of announcements that are not just generally pulled or scraped from the papers I read and try to follow what is going to be for the readers of particular interest, so that one, the company can profess and say, here is what we're doing. So it gives them improved exposure, but it also lets others learn what's happening maybe in Asia, what's happening in Europe, what's happening in a retail market or healthcare that you may not participate in, but you can learn from what they're doing or what some of your partners are doing. So you may be able to extend that relationship, giving them better access to the research that I have so that they know what is happening and other critical information. I also try to highlight organizations that I think are kind of unique. Mm-hmm. And that gives maybe a smaller growing company the opportunity to see it, of which WorkSpan actually was one of the early on noted companies as you were growing, and also a section that individuals can voice their opinions. Mm-hmm. And that is, an editorial comment section that they can contribute. So there's many ways that they can get their voice out, let other people know what is happening, why it's happening. And I follow that up, as I said, with a lot of the research that I do. I produce a semi-annual trend report. Mm-hmm. And in that trend report, I'm consolidating, creating visuals of ecosystems or alliances or how platforms are working so that someone can use that as a reference document. They don't have to always go hunting and searching. So, I always say the case in point, or why it becomes important. One, I can keep track of everything, and that's the only way to really do it. But also, I've had individuals contact me saying, all excited, I'm about to sign this great relationship with this company. And I've turned many occasions and said, well, you realize they have 4 of the same similar relationships. How are you going to distinguish yourself from the rest of the 4? Or are you going to be a so what? So that also gives them empowerment to go back and say, maybe we need to craft this relationship in another way, or maybe we aren't as so special as we initially thought. So,
mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I know. And you, not only in your client meetings, but you do a regular survey, and in your research, you're a hub of.
The pulse. I sometimes you always know the definition of an expert. An expert is somebody who does something too long, too much. So, that is one of the, I guess, true benefits I've had to realize. That's my role, and it's enjoyable because I like seeing where the pieces fit.
Yep.
If you're starting to see things move, I guess a geologist or somebody else who sees rock formations, changing. This is a dynamic time and it's exciting. So there's also an opportunity for we're seeing that chasm point in business take place. Mm. And I honestly believe from everything that I'm seeing is that alliances and ecosystems are becoming a key cornerstone in that future success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. We just seeing a lot of research from C-level executives saying ecosystems are, where we're going to get competitive advantage. And by the way, if we don't, our competitors will, and they'll be able to outcompete us because they built a better ecosystem. So it's really it's a really strong dynamic these days that.
Yeah. And, I'll add one more dimension, which I'm seeing on a regular basis take place. The
Mhm.
phenomenal aspect of customers driving that as well. So they're saying, we realize you cannot do everything. No
Mhm.
one can do that.
Mhm.
And we know we have all these other options. So tell us who you are partnering with. And that's how we're going to actually see real value. And going back to the trust, is that you're not just saying I signed an agreement with X because I need to check a box off or have it on an RFP, but I can actually demonstrate success stories, and then I'm really making an investment. Because if we, again, go back to a cloud environment, or from a creation of having two companies work together, I can always go out and buy products. And, if at a hardware store or gadget, and if I have enough skills, I can put together something. So I'll use the analogy, since I was talking about cars, a wagon. It just came to me. So I apologize. But I can go buy wheels, and I can buy, the bed, and I can buy the right handle or whatever, and probably do a decent job putting it together. But if I buy it from someone who says that we have put the best together, and probably a better example is a bicycle, who has German brakes and French gears and whatever the case may be, that by putting those together, I actually end up with a better product because they've thought about how they're going to have it integrated.
Right.
So that's really what the ecosystem value should be. Going back to my first statement about a customer first approach, is by buying it together, I realize a greater result, which is the definition of alliances, than I would by myself.
That's great. Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Hey, Chris, this has been fantastic. Let me ask you one other question. I've asked this a number of times, and before you were an analyst with IDC, you had a lot of years managing alliances, and so you're a practitioner as well as a thought leader. Any words of advice that you would have for someone that's maybe thinking of, going into alliances? Maybe they've had a different career path, but they think this could be really interesting. Any words of wisdom that you would share to?
Well, there's two worlds many times that people say, be an expert or be a specialist. I would say for the future of alliances and ecosystems, the best way is to be a generalist, because you need to have multiple skill sets and multiple talents that you can draw upon, and you can understand whether or not you may wanted to be a chief financial officer in the beginning of your career. So you started in a financial track. That's invaluable of trying to look at, budgets and managing it. The same thing with the marketing, and the same thing with channels or sales, et cetera. So I believe we need more of those generalists to facilitate the change and help drive it. Plus, there's a necessity and the excitement of being a general manager, so to speak, for your assigned areas and how you're working. The other one is go back to basics. And what I mean by that is, we seem to always want to get to the end result. Maybe that's the added benefit of saying, hey, I can jump through A, B, C, and D and just get to E. Well, the basics say I have to be able to do my core planning, have the time, understand why, know that you have a course. What's the best coach? Someone who doesn't always have one game plan. They know if, the competition reacts in a way, they have another alternative way to counter that.
Yeah.
So doing proper planning helps you give options, keeps you guided, keeps you focused, and gives you the foundation of how to better articulate what your needs and requirements. And again, how can you help the company achieve its overall goal?
That's great. That's really good advice, and it makes me think of a common theme that I've heard from a number of alliance professionals that say, one of the things that they love about this role is that, in a way, you're sort of running an entire business, right? You got to build a strategy, build a product, joint product, do the marketing, do the sales, close, and then manage that whole end-to-end process. So to your point, if you have all of those general skills and you are more of a generalist in business, you'll have the skills you need to be able to bring to that challenge.
And every day's new and exciting, which is great. And, I had my daughter not too long ago ask me, how did you know what you wanted to be? And I said, ask me in 5 years when I figure it out. So you are always going through that changes, but that's the great part of life that makes you up in the morning and really have some fun, because the world's not clearly defined and the roads are open and they're constantly changing, especially in this field. Yeah.
Now you're really getting philosophical, Chris.
It's getting, for me, closer to the end of the day, so I can gravitate to that. So.
Well, this has been great, Chris. Really appreciate you joining and spending some time with us. And I'm sure anyone that's listening has already gotten a lot of value from your the ideas and things that you've shared. What's a good way to get in touch with you if someone wants to reach out to you?
Sure. Probably the easiest way is C. Weber with 2 B's. So CWEBBER at IDC.com. And also, that's probably the most direct way. And then LinkedIn and see that. And that's always another alternative.
Awesome. Great. All right, Chris, thank you so much for your time today, and I think with that we will sign off for today. And for Chris Weber, I'm Chip Rodgers, and thanks everyone for joining, and see you next time on the next Alliance Aces. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.